Hi. It is Wednesday at noon, and so this must be Writing Wednesday. I'm Janet Fitch, and I am here to answer people's questions about writing and the writing life and your problems. I'm here to answer questions that you have about your own writing. And if you have questions, just go ahead and leave them um, in the comments, and then I'll know, what I might be talking about today. Hi, Jeffrey. Hey, Linda. Good, very good holiday. I'm home, so holiday is relatively speaking, holiday. But things are looking up. Hi, Alicia. Yeah, so we're coming on Christmas or the whole month. I think people just want something to do, so there's going to be a lot of decoration and stuff going on for the holidays. What's coming up for me is there is a writing a fiction first aid, fiction memoir first aid coming up on Saturday, this Saturday, the 5th, starting at 10 and going from there. Number of people have been asking for a Saturday session instead of the Friday session, so this month we're trying the Saturday session. So fiction first aid will be it'll be me, Alex Espinoza, who teaches at Riverside, UC Riverside, and is a very popular community of writers teacher. Dana Johnson, who teaches at USC and a very, very fine writer and teacher. Me, and Sans Hall, who is a wonderful memoirist as well as writing stories. Hi, everybody. Hi, Brenda. Hey, May. Good to see you guys. So think about questions that you want. And so fiction first aid is 15-minute consults. You'd be amazed how much you can get done in 15 minutes. It's the best $25 you've ever spent in your life. You have that question that's been bothering you, or you've always wondered, how is my prose? Have somebody take a look at just a page of your work. It's amazing how much information you can get in such a short time. So if you're interested in signing up for Fiction First Aid this Saturday, there are slots available because there are going to be 4 writers on call. So look at communityofwriters.org. It'll have the sign up. And I'm going to be teaching The Art of the Sentence in January. It's scheduled for the 22nd, 23rd, 24th weekend intensive. So if you want to do it, just strike out that whole weekend. And we're going to be working on sentences and how style is created in your work. People, when I was getting rejected all over the place, I didn't realize that my prose itself was having problems. I was a pretty good storyteller, good on conflict, good on character, but my prose was flabby, tasteless, just was doing nothing for me. And I've worked over the years to think about how to get inside the sentence, how to get inside other other great prose stylists and see how it works, so that as you develop your own style, like how to develop your own style, how to find it, how to find what you like, how to handle language. Hi, Karen. So I'm looking, Brenda says, Fiction First Aid, is there a best page for the writer to review? You can go 2 ways. A good page is the first page, first page of a novel edited to death, but any page, your writing is holographic. I mean, any piece of it will be a piece of it, just like a piece of your body has the same DNA no matter what. If you're having problems in your style, it will be evident anywhere. Dialogue has special problems, so if you feel you have dialogue problems, any page of dialogue will instantly reveal the problems. If it's more your exposition that you're thinking of, any page that has description will help. If you have trouble describing your characters, a page of where you're describing a character is interesting. But any random sample will generally have the problems inherent in the whole. So that's for Fiction First Aid. Oh, thanks, Karen. Signed up for the Art of the Sentence. Yeah, there's an early bird discount. So if you sign up before a certain time, you get a big whacking discount. Do you still plan on writing a deactivate story? That sounds like a, Jeffrey, that sounds like a autocorrect problem there. I think that detective story maybe. So there are a lot of questions that are happening. So awesome! I'm looking forward to this. So anyway, January 22nd, 23rd, 24th for the Art of the Sentence, and then this Saturday for Fiction First Aid, and give you a one-on-one where you can examine. Somebody can help you out with your own work. So, Jeffrey says, yeah, you plan on writing a detective story. There is a new noir from the noir series in with Akashic Books. They did the Los Angeles Noir. I had a piece in that, and they have Brooklyn Noir and Copenhagen Noir, and there's a brand new one, Accra, Ghana, Accra Noir. Edited by Nana Ama. Oh God, I can't think of her name. Donaqua is her last name, and so it's all Ghanaian noir, which is awesome. But there will be a Palm Springs noir coming. Should be soon, like January, February. Then I have a noir story in there, so that was really fun to write. So let's take a look at some of your questions. Here's one from May. Where do you find research or resources for writing historical fiction, as in personal opinions and attitudes? Okay. Writing the Russian books was just all research. Well, I did go 3 times to Russia, but historical is always going to be book research. I suggest book research. The internet is good for certain things. There's JSTOR, JSTOR, and JSTOR is the web serve, or whatever they call it, web serve for historical articles and historical research. And you're going to need a library login. You can't just do it straight off the internet. You need to log in through a library. Somebody has to subscribe to JSTOR. If you are lucky enough to be alumni of a college that allows you to use their library system, and you can, my JSTOR comes through my college where I was a student back in the old days. That's their like little gift to the alums for hopefully giving them money every year. But your own library, your own public library, will have a login for JSTOR, and there are just innumerable articles, scholarly articles, right up your alley. You're going to have to sharpen your research tools to figure out what you're looking for in likely places. But JSTOR, also a lot of book research. I found that doing, for my historical novels, for Marina M. and Chimes of a Lost Cathedral. The libraries, your best bet is library research or book research. You have to buy the book. Sometimes Google Books, you can kind of weasel your way in there, but I hate Google Books, because they don't pay the writers. Sometimes, when you're doing research, you're just shaking the trees and doing the best you can. Memoirs are really, really useful. Memoirs of, characters contemporary to your own. Especially for me, women's memoirs, because men, especially in a revolution like the Russian Revolution, men want to talk about the big events. So their memoirs are like to highlight what they know about the decisions that were being made and how close were they to Lenin, how close were they to, to the action. So that gave me no help whatsoever, because I could read history and get that. What I wanted to know was stuff like, how did it feel to, live behind locked doors for years at a time? How did it feel to stand in those bread lines? How did it feel? How did you wash your clothes when there was no hot water in your building and you had to carry water up from the courtyard? How did that feel? What about the diapers? How did you feed your family? How did you cook? How exactly did you cook when the stove, there were no, stoves didn't work, people were living in a single room? Where did they get those stoves, and how did they work? How did they heat? And women's memoirs, because they weren't intended for publication, are very frank about the conditions of life, whereas men they don't want to write about all that stuff. They're living with it, it's right in their faces, but they want that contact with my opinion of what the Bolsheviks are doing is not as useful. Women's memoirs, tremendously useful, because the elements of life are there, the texture of the life. And then, so memoir is letters and memoirs. And often people edit their letters, they don't want to talk about diapers. So memoirs are even better than letters. But these documents have been kept, and it's tracking them down is worthwhile. So especially in the lockdown, you're going to have to figure out how to get a hold of the books. But JSTOR it's the reason that I had a historical novel that failed many years before Marina M. And I think because there wasn't as much available online, that it failed. Whereas when I was writing that book, I had JSTOR and was able to really get into the journals and get the information that I needed. So let's see what else I can tell you. Fiction first aid. Alicia has a memoir question. Has anyone seen the reviews of Hillbilly Elegy? I feel the critics are being very harsh, criticizing his take on Appalachia. Memoir is what the writer sees and experiences. Oh, yeah. No, I haven't seen it. I'm not I'm working my way through The Crown, but tend not to watch a bunch of TV because I'm reading. But I think that the memoirs are really interesting. Art made from memoirs, especially, a film, is not going to be a good source of research, because it's stylized. It's something that was already processed. And then processed again, abbreviated and stuff to make a movie. So I assume that whatever they did with Hillbilly Elegy probably kind of blurred what the intent was. So it might be good on its own, but if I was to attempt to encounter that material, I would probably go straight to the memoir. I don't think critics can comment on someone's experience to the extent that they do. Oh yeah, That's a totally different thing. It's why I like fiction better than memoir, because I'll read, you know, I'll read memoir sometimes and just think that would have been a really good novel, because mush, you can take two events and make them one. You can cut this character, make this happen, draw this over. You have that freedom. Whereas memoir, it is hard to criticize somebody's memoir because it is their life. But on the other hand, it is a work of art, which can be criticized. But you certainly don't have the freedom to change things in memoir the way you do. If somebody doesn't like your life, what are you supposed to do about it? Jeffrey asks, do you have any advice on writing horror? I am for me, I am very affected by horror. I am so paranoid. I am so anxious and so paranoid that I cannot read horror. I mean, I grew up with Poe. My brother used to read me Poe when my parents were out. I was like 7, 6, 7, 8. And, I had nothing against the old man. It was his vulture eye. So, I mean, horror is the one genre that I just leave that alone. I can't. Life is horrible enough. I don't need to freak myself out. I mean, I saw the uncut. Do you remember there was a subliminal cut of The Exorcist back in the 70s, where they cut all kinds of junk, scarier stuff into the film? Or maybe that was an urban legend. Anyway, I remember going to see The Exorcist with some friends, and I don't even believe in the devil. I'm not a Christian, and I'm like, it took me like 3 years to get over The Exorcist. So my advice on writing horror stories is, like anything else, the more fantastic something is, the more real it needs to be. So the more you need to ground it in the senses and make it feel really real, rather than making it like heightening the fantastic element. It generally, then you don't have to worry about it, because that's not your world. The more it is your world, the scarier it is. Let's see. Basic things like playing music and day-to-day stuff. Yeah, what they listened. This is the historical writing question. To know what they listened to, what they read, what they ate, what they, what kind of news were they worried about at that time? What were they aware of? What weren't they aware of? Who were their idols? Who was your character's idol growing up in the 1820s? Everybody had them. Hey, Terry. Good to see you. Let's see. 2020 is a horror story, Alicia says. Yeah, it certainly was. So did I miss a question? No. Okay. Well, we have some questions from readers on the interwebs. When writing a fiction story, which would you do first? World building, story outline, or character outline? None of the above. I just start in. I see something in my head when I think of a story. I just start in, and then the questions start coming up. Say I'm writing about world building, so this is fantasy, right? Well, it doesn't have to be. Say I'm writing a world building. I'm writing a story about a commune, somebody on a commune. So world building, I think that's important, is to figure out like what your commune is. What do they have in common? Is Is it a religious commune? Is it social justice commune? Is it an organic farming commune? Is it a free love commune? Like, what is the point of the commune? I'd probably want to get that down pretty soon. Story outline, I don't do that. Probably should, but I don't. It's good to have some sense of where it's going, but I don't. And then character outline. I feel my characters, and then I work with them, and usually it's not right at the beginning. It's usually as I go along, I have to make some choices about the character, what the relationship is, what my characters, like I run out of what I know about a character, and then I have to interview them. I have to ask them what they think, who they are, what their problem is, what am I not seeing, what were you like, as a 12-year-old. Often I talk to various characters and maybe ask about the other ones. So when writing a story, I don't normally make an ordinal decision like that, like what comes first, world building, story outline, character. I usually have an idea of character. I usually have an idea of the beginning of a story or the climax of a story. And then I do have to keep track of the world that I'm creating. I do it in Scrivener, and so I know, like, where's that house supposed to be, and where was her junior high, and where her friend lived near, where was it compared, in relationship to her own house, and what was her mother's take on religion, and I have to keep all that stuff straight, and it's really important to keep it straight. And as you build it, it gains solidity, in the reader's mind. That's the structure of your world, is what really makes it believable, that they can turn away and turn back and it's still the same world. There's one that's a really good question here. I'm going to take some of the short ones and then go to the one that's really quite an impressive one. Laura has one. Would you write an outline for a historical fiction novel, like Marina M? Did you start with a scene in mind, or did you write an outline? I didn't need to write an outline. This was historical fiction, and history is chronological. History is linear. It's pretty big, but I wanted to tell a girl's story in terms of the Russian Revolution. So I didn't really need to write an outline because I knew that certain large events were going to be like big posts, big mileposts in the story. But I follow the character. I put pressure on them and see what's going to happen. But then she had to interact with the Russian Revolution, which had its own timetable. And so I could, the unfolding of her personal story and the unfolding of Russia's story were in tandem. But no outline. I don't outline before, but I will afterwards, or while I'm writing, I'll try to note the timelines, things I have to keep straight in my mind, what's already happened and what's, the structure of events. So I know I don't want emotionally repetitive events. So really careful to note the last time, we saw this character, what basically happened in that chapter, and make sure that the next chapter contrasts with it rather than repeating the same action. Brenda asks, do I have a process for recording my reaction and reflection to what's going on in the unbelievable post-election period? No, I just have a journal. I have my journal, and I have to write in it. I write in it every day, just pages of my reaction to what's going on. Then my struggle not to become horribly depressed. So there's a lot of emotional not exploration, but emotional wrangling of myself. So it definitely has notes about the emotional impact of what's going on right now, and then personal craziness as well as the national craziness, and my reaction to how I feel about it's like how I feel about the fact that our country is where it is, and how I feel about certain fellow citizens who are, we're going to be chained to them forever. We're chained to them. It's like being in a chain gang with crazy people, with a crazy person, and you're handcuffed to them. It's not, there is no disappearing them, much as that just isn't going to happen. So a lot of my thought is about that. No, I don't save interesting articles, but you could. I mean, why wouldn't you? If you want to grab some piece of information, it'll certainly be helpful if you want to write about this period to have grabbed all that material. But it'll be out there. You don't have to save articles that you could cut out anymore. When you need them, they should be there. It's a highly recorded culture right now. The thing that I like to save are these memes that come up and are passed around wildly at certain times, and especially during the pandemic, but certain times during the last 4 years, you'll just get a wave of these memes, and very clever, and they're going to be hard to find again. So I do a screenshot and save those. It's very interesting. So you could have a file on your computer under your notebooks, just call it post-election 2020, and you can just cut and paste little paragraphs of things you've seen that you want to save, or if you want to link the whole thing. Scrivener is also very good for linking, so if you wanted to do a Scrivener file on it. I think, there'll be too much to print out, frankly, in a notebook like we do, like the ring binder is probably too much information for that. So if you want to see it as a project, do a Scrivener project with it. Please stop talking about my mother again. So here's another question. Would you share some tips on descriptive writing and emotion? Well, that is really interesting. I'm not one, I don't think people should. I don't think it helps to label emotion. She was depressed. She did blah, 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 blah. You can show the action of somebody. What do people who are depressed do? What do they think? You can show the thoughts of a depressed person and let the reader realize, oh, no, this person is really depressed. I went to the circus, to the fair with Johnny. I was so tired of cotton candy and rides that went around and around and left you right back where you started. You don't have to say that person's depressed, because the thought of the circularity of the rides is not, this was really fun. It's that this is really depressing. It is depressing. But so avoid labeling emotion. Don't label. There you go. That's a good start for Elizabeth, if you're here. Also, you use the ambient environment to describe the emotion or to capture emotion in a way that you don't have to label it. Like one of my favorite exercises is from John Gardner's The Art of Writing, which is you describe the same house, the same time of day, the same everything, but in one description, this is the house my lover lives in. And you don't mention the lover, you don't mention anything about the who lives there, the relationship, anything. But the mere way of looking at that place with love is going to be different than this is the house my blackmailer lives in. Same everything, but suddenly the charming whatever in the first one becomes the ominous or threatening, what hated whatever in the second. You know, the way the sagging porch seems homey when it's your lover and seems dangerous when it's your blackmailer. And then you don't say, you're just working with mood and language and point of view. So descriptive, so you want to set a mood, like talking about horror. You know, you set a mood. You can look at a perfectly normal ranch house in a suburb, but if it's a horror movie, there's something that we feel just in the language, the way you describe the bottle glass in the front door and the shadows moving around behind it and the kind of, Uranus yellow color of that glass and the rocks in the garden, seem sharp and untrustworthy. You just, it's in the description of things that we pick up the mood. The Art of Writing by John Gardner is probably one of my top 3 books on writing that are worth the money. Here is a question. How do I become a fiction writer if I do not have time or the money to read books? If I do not have time and money to read books. All right, well, that's an honest question, that many people struggle with reading. When do I find the time to read? The money to read is not really, that's kind of fake because libraries exist. I don't know about you, my library is lending again. You order online, you make an appointment to pick up your books, and you go and they have a table outside. They put the books out in a bag for you. At your time, you take your books away. I mean, even in COVID, we can still use the library. And there are e-readers. You can even use your computer to read e-books, which have no contact whatsoever. So money is not, you can do that through your library. So money is not as big of an issue as the time to read. And time to read is, if you're writing and not reading, what do you think? Who's going to read your book? Of course, somebody has to be reading to have readers, to have writers, right? So that means you're respecting the project of literature as a whole, which means you open yourself up to other people's work. You're not born out of Zeus's forehead already knowing everything and how to do things. And people will have insights and talents and craft that you need to know about. And so how do you do this? Because we talked about reading as a writer is reading challenging books, reading books that don't go down so easy. It's like everybody's going to finish that Ludlum or some kind of fast reading cool thing. But we're talking about learning from our reading. Reading things that don't go down so smooth. That you have to engage with, that you have to work with, How do you create the time to read? Now, I looked at my piles and piles of books that I were, in my house. Just, you can't imagine. And it's like, how am I ever going to get through these books, and find out what's in them? So I figured, okay, what if I read 100 books a year? What would it take to read 100 books a year? And I don't mean reading, Gone Girl or, reading that kind of stuff. I'm talking about books that I'm going to engage with, that I need. How am I going to do it? I don't read that fast. And I thought, okay, 100 books a year. How am I going to get through 100 books a year? Then I thought, okay, how fast do I read? So I did some time tests, set my phone, 10 minutes and read in some book. How much can I get done in 10 minutes? Okay, so I get 5 pages, this kind of book, I get 5 pages in 10 minutes. So that means an hour, I'm going to get 50 pages, right? No. God, math. 60 minutes, 30 pages in an hour is what I'm going to get out of that. So I started doing the math and thought, if I could read for 90 minutes a day, I could get 2 books a week and a book every 3 days. And so then now I know I need to read 90 minutes a day, but not in a leisurely manner. I need to really read like I am on the job. So what I do is I use my clock. I'm very big on timers. Where's my timer? You've all seen it, my little white kitchen timer. I kind of like it better than the phone because then I don't look on Facebook or Instagram or anything. So I'll set my timer for 10 minutes and then I will read as fast as I can and still, absorbing the information. And you find if you do this in like 10 minutes, you read something, you figure out, okay, I get 6 pages in 10 minutes. Then you push yourself the next 10 minutes. You really try to get more than 6 minutes, 6 pages. And then the next time you just read a regular pace, and you will find that you have increased your reading speed. And then the next 10 minutes, I'll try again, really to bear down on that. And then when I read again at my regular speed, I have speeded up my reading. So it was important for me to push my reading speed and not dilly-dally, And then I started being able to read 2 books a week. So you cannot become a fiction writer if you do not have the time and money to read books. Forget the money. If you do not have time to read books, then, it's tough because you're also trying to, but you need that oxygen in the water. You need to be part of that process and not just be out drifting on the high seas trying to, get your own book done, because you're not going to push yourself the same way. Try to always have a book that inspires you, that's going to give you ideas, that's going to put that extra oxygen in your fish tank, going at the same time. I read in the morning before I do anything else. Instead of reading the newspaper, instead of scrolling through, social media, it's like, that'll keep for evening. Really try to read a book. Read books. I don't read magazines. I don't read a lot of the journals. I read some stories and stuff. I read some poetry. But it's essential for me to get through some fiction, some tough fiction, something interesting, something that's going to spark me and not just make me feel all cozy. Who cares if I'm cozy or not? I can do that at night instead of watching TV. But in prime time, I need to be reading something good and pushing myself. So let's see, any other questions? Feel free to ask questions. Today is a day I don't have a lot of pre-planned material, so I'm open to answering your questions. Here's one. This is interesting. This is more personal. What did you learn about yourself or someone else while writing your last piece of fiction? So I'm going to, let's see, my last piece of fiction. So I'm writing something now, which is I thought was a mother-daughter novel. Mother, elderly mother, middle-aged daughter, and that conflict. But then I realized that the daughter has a daughter, and she's not really been much involved. She's a grown woman, but realizing that the damage that the elderly mother did to the middle-aged one has passed down, even though she tried to do everything opposite. So it's this linked kind of staircase of damage. And how do you redeem that? So that was something I learned about myself, because that's, I'm in that lineage too, and everybody else is too. You can't avoid it. You're doing damage because you live in the physical world, and you cannot avoid having been damaged, and unless you have been able to get a hold of that before you pass it on, you will pass it on in some bizarre way. What else did I learn? Well, what did I learn when I was working on Marina and the Chimes of the Lost Cathedral? I learned that if you stay with the work and you keep asking yourself, what can I say here about the human condition? What is important going on here? What is putting pressure on my characters? You will eventually finish that book. That it will not be, I've known this though, it will not be what you hoped it would be. It will be something completely different, and accepting that. But for me, it was also having the faith that I knew how to do this, and it would eventually finish. I was tormented by the book. I mean, it took 12 years to do those 2 books. But you get to a certain point and there's no turning back. There's no alternative but to go forward. And my character told me, that wisdom is not, what's her line? Wisdom is not choosing between this and that. Wisdom is knowing what you have to do and doing it, choosing it. I learned that. I learned that despair is not forever. Living through it, and you do come out the other side. Diane, hi Diane. Diane says, do you plan to integrate our current existence into future writing? People wearing masks or other new behaviors. It is fascinating that even in what I'm writing, which is set in 2012, I have it. But I do find myself not writing so much about groups of people and parties and stuff like that. It's already affecting my work, even though I'm not writing about this period. I'm sure that I will integrate our current world into what I write next. I read students collection that has stories where people are already, in pandemic mode and worried about the other person and worried about having to go out. And I'm sure that this there will be concerns that I don't even know. Maybe it won't be so much masks in that, unless I choose to write about this year. But I wouldn't be surprised if there will be germaphobes in my work. I've never been a germaphobe before, but suddenly I'm like, got the Clorox and I'm scrubbing away, and it's unlocked a whole aspect of life that I never paid any attention to before. So it's changed me. It has changed me. So therefore, yes, I'm sure that my fiction will change. I'm sure it'll change all of us going, so that as we're writing about the current, our contemporary life, this will all seep in. So Jeffrey says, what kind of role does music play in your writing? I talked about this last week, that music sets a mood, that keeps you in a mood, especially if you're working on something for a long time. You can come back to the mood of the book by using music. Music also irritates you, so it gives you ideas, and you react to it, keeps you awake. But mostly it's for evoking mood. So somebody will have their music. Actually, most people in my books have their own music. They have their own smell, they have their own foods, they have their own flowers, they have their own colors, and music is definitely part of that. My current novel, the character had two husbands, and one of them was Japanese national, and he has his sort of theme music, and the second husband was a rockabilly guitar player. So there's the rockabilly. This is, there's stuff set in the early 70s, so the music of the early 70s is this woman's childhood, her teenhood. So that music will be part of it. Yeah, it's, the music is part of the times. Boy, I'll tell you, if you read Mary Gaitskill's Veronica, she won the National Book Award for that. She talks a lot about the music of the 60s and how people live, how you lived inside the music as if you were part of the song. I remember that distinctly. In Chimes and Marina M., there was I think a lot about Tchaikovsky, I think a lot of Prokofiev, and then the folk songs, the Russian folk songs, very much part of it. Let's see, what else can I... Yeah, that question about integrating our current experience into writing, you're going to see a lot of writing about it, just like you saw a lot of writing about 9/11. But I feel that it's going to be about, for me, it'll be composted in with further experience. So here's a question. There was a question by Brenda and a question by Megan. Here's Megan. Any recommending for finding critique partners and groups in the era of COVID when you don't leave the house and don't know any writers? Well, when I taught the class on writing from the senses, I made sure that there were breakout groups and people could get to know other people who were taking the class and talk about the issues and stuff. And then if they were looking for a group, they could reach out. And I did that. That wasn't my idea. That was Brett's at the Community of Writers, which, if anybody ever did their workshops, summer workshops, the conference, Squaw Valley Community of Writers summer workshop, the people who run that, Brett Hall in particular, is very into creating community. That's huge. That's her thing. And Community of Writers. So when I taught the class in writing from the senses, she said, how can we build community here? Not just teach your class, but help people make connections. So anything you see me teaching there will have that component. So if you're interested in doing the art of the sentence, there will be that component, because Community of Writers is so insistent on doing that, and it just makes a huge difference. And then I wanted to pick up Brenda's question, which was, what was the best fiction you've read in 2020? Oh my God. I'd have to go and figure out what I've been reading. Oh, the best. My daughter was very good. She's very funny. And she told me that in Finland, you don't say the best. You don't say what's the, we're so hung up on ratings and quantification, etc., that we're dazzled. Like, what's the 3 best thing? That's a real guy thing, because you can sit in a bar and go, okay, 3 best bands, blah, 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 and then you can argue about it. I like it as a conversation starter. But my daughter said in Finland, you never say the best. Oh, this is the best cup of coffee. That is so American that in Finland, it's just like, this is a wonderful cup of coffee. So let's just say, instead of the best, some wonderful books that I've read. I'm learning. See, I'm learning from my adult daughter. I'm reading something, let's see, what have I read that has just swept me away? Sort of brain dead. Right now I'm reading 2 books I'm really enjoying. The Old Drift, and I forgot her name. The Old Drift. It's a very big book this year. And I'm reading The Department of Speculation by Jenny Offel, which is small and experimental. So it's good for me, as we've been talking about, to read things that are challenging. The Old Drift is very challenging in its writing style and structure. So it's important to read tough stuff that you can then ask yourself, what are they doing? How's this working? How are they doing this? It's amazing. What else have I loved this year? It's just a cascade. But those 2 I'm really enjoying. Wow, it's just flooding me. I'll think of a few things as we go along. But thank you for that question. Let's see what else I can answer. The most challenging fiction I've read. That's a really good question. Oh, right now I'm reading 3 Lives by Gertrude Stein. And I resisted it because it seems kind of boring. But I'm in a reading group that is all tough books. The whole idea of that, I was one of the founders back in the day, and the idea was to read books that you needed to read it with other people. I mean, hard books that you need other people to get through them, to understand them. We've read Joy, we read Ulysses, we read The Magic Mountain, we read Life, a User's Manual by George Perec. We read, really tough books. And it's like I would never read 3 Lives by Gertrude Stein or anything by Gertrude Stein, because I'd open it and it's just like, what the hell is going on? It's kind of boring, but kind of interesting the more I get into it and see how she's telling this. The telling of it is more interesting than the book itself. As with it, To the Lighthouse, which I read. Did I read that this year? To the Lighthouse, Virginia Woolf. Oh my God, that was beautiful. If you haven't read it, that is a book to read. I really liked some short story collections. The Heads of the Colored People by Nafisa Spires was gorgeous. A lot of short stories I've been reading. I'll think of some others. Oh my God, the Dictionary of Animal Languages by Heidi Sapinka. Um, Experimental, and a lot of it was about sound, and it really made me so much more aware of listening for sound. That was a beautiful book. Oh my God, I wrote all over it. Oh, good. Zunaid just got the old drift. Amazing. Amazing. Um, Most challenging that I've been reading. What have I been reading? Oh, I'm sure things will come to me as we talk. So what did I learn about myself while writing my last piece of fiction? Well, the historical fiction, I've put my character in Chimes of Lost Cathedral. My character, Marina M., goes into a very tough choice. She has to make a very tough choice. She's kind of been boxed in by a very clever tactician, a betrayal issue. Do you betray people further from you to protect somebody close to you? What are your options in a situation like that where you're really, the well-being of somebody close to you is being threatened, but to betray would betray a lot more people. And she's given some advice by Maxime Gorky, who's a major character in the second novel, in Chimes of Lost Cathedral. She's given some advice by Gorky, and she is able, and he just lays it out, and then he says, "How brave are you?" And she doesn't know. And she, it's like moral dilemmas. That was having to suffer through that with my character really called up something where you're asking yourself these deep moral questions. And my feeling is if you're not asking yourself deep moral questions in your work, it's not going to be high on the aspirational. I've told you about the Capsch continuum. It's got a point on one side that's duty, and then the arrow goes up. And it's the line between duty and aspiration. If you're not asking yourself these really big questions, you're not moving up the aspirational arrow. You're staying pretty close to duty. You're telling the story about the story because it's a story and one thing after another, etc. But if you can push up that ladder, we used to call it the Capsch, Kapsch, because my professor of political science named Stephen Capsch invented it. So it's a little dot at the lower side. It's a vector, which is an arrow that goes from a fixed point and then just keeps going, because you can never go too high in aspiration. It goes forever, right? So, but it has duty at the lower end. So you want to see how far you can push up that arrow. And one of the things is by making a big statement about human life, something we need to know beyond just story qua story. Even an entertainment can have moments of insight. All the great writers do that. They push it to some statement or some dilemma or something that speaks to our lives rather than just a bag of Doritos and yum, yum, eat it, and then what's next? It doesn't make a dent. You don't even remember the story because it didn't make an emotional dent in your life. It never helped you with your life. It never opened anything up. And I think literature, the point of literature is to open us up and make us think about stuff we normally don't have time or focus to do so. Let's see. What happens to the dream when the dreamer is gone? Yeah, you just push it one more step, you know. And that's what the great writers do. So the more we read them and the less we read kind of these pot boilers, the better. What else? I would love to think about challenging issues. So how do you get a writers group together during COVID if you don't know any writers? Well, first of all, it's a good thing to start following people, writers that you like, on social media and noticing them and noticing what's going on with them. Joining that community. NaNoWriMo, we're at the tail end of it. It's probably over, right? November. Probably had little breakout rooms and things where you can reach out and say, I'm not in a writer's group. I could use some crit. But in January, if you take Art of the Sentence, there will be breakout rooms, and we will be encouraging people who don't have a writer's group to reach out. And what's nice about online groups, and a group, it doesn't have to be a group. It can be another person, 2 other people, 3 other people. Writers groups are just groups of writers. You don't have to join something that's already in progress. You can form something and just try that out. Here's a question. What are your thoughts on co-writing a novel? You know what? That was always discouraged, of course, because we are egotists and we want our name on the novel. But there are writers who have worked in tandem with other people. And watching my husband, who's a comedy writer, work with his writing partner of 50 years to see how they work, I think that co-writing a novel could be fabulous if people aren't egotistical and they're able to hear the other person and respect the other person's contribution. That could be really interesting. Some people who have done this, I'm not getting any examples springing to mind of people who have co-written a novel. They often use a pseudonym, a single person, because the reader doesn't like to hear that there are 2 people who've created it. They like this auteur, but there are, and you'd have to look it up to see. And I want to say like Ellery Queen was 2 people who wrote together. But yes, it has been done. Sometimes they write every other chapter. I would think it'd be very interesting to write each person would write the story from a point of view, like if you have a couple, and one person writes one of the partners, and then the next chapter would be the other point of view, and writing back and forth like that could be very interesting. Epistolatory novel that people write letters back and forth could be very interesting form for 2 people to write together. A present and a past story where one person writes one and one person writes the other. But sometimes it's just like the way my husband and his writing partner write is that like they'll sit in a room and one person will type and one person will talk, and then they go back and forth, and you can't see who did what, by the time it's over. They just kind of tumble over each other, and it becomes this organic process. Yeah, I want to say it was Ellery Queen, but there are, and you should be able to Google people who've co-written novels. There was a novel in when I was, in the 70s, when people were trying every darn thing, called Naked Came the Stranger, that had like all of the famous writers that practically everybody wrote a chapter of it, and it was a complete mess, but fun. They had a lot of fun doing it. There was probably 12 people who contributed to Naked Came the Stranger. Um, but it was notoriously a very bad novel. Everybody's so, you have your own strong style and you're egotistical, and especially those writers. I don't know if Mailer did it, but it was like people like that. So, nobody's going to cooperate with anybody. So you have to be a certain kind of person to collaborate with anything. I'm a terrible collaborator because I'm such an egotist. Um, I want to be God of my own planet, and I don't necessarily want to. I'm not good. Maybe I could do it now, but when I was younger, I remember when I was making film, I was terrible. Not good at listening to other people's ideas and incorporating them and being open to uh, other people's creativity. I learned my lesson. Anything else? Feel free to ask. So, in the meantime, I wanted to. Oh, thanks, Brenda. Uh, Liking my Writing Wednesdays here. So, in the meantime, I want to say again the 5th of December, this Saturday, there is a Saturday version of Fiction First Aid. And you can sign up at communityofwriters.org for a 15-minute consult with really good writer teachers, me, Alex Espinoza, Dana Johnson, and Sands Hall. And then on the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th of January, just after inauguration, there will be a weekend workshop, The Art of the Sentence, with me, and we're just going to look at sentences and build sentences and tear them apart and play with them and look at style and see how style is formed. And if people are looking for writers groups, we will have breakout sessions, and you can reach out to people in the Community of Writers style. So that's communityofwriters.org as well. And so I wish you good writing, and onward we go. Okay, bye.